1.6 billion. That's how much my local council, Croydon, owed at the peak of its debts in 2022. In this video, we'll explain to you how Croydon Council spent 1.6 billion on rebuilding a concert hall that went 30 million over budget, despite many people not being able to tell the difference, a 200 million pound failed luxury property development scheme that delivered a house without stairs, and all the preparations to not build a giant Westfield shopping centre. This is the infuriating story of how Croydon Council became one of Britain's most bankrupt. 1.6 billion, that's a lot of money. If you had that amount of cash, you could buy around 300 houses in central London. You could buy a Premier League football team to sports wash over the crimes of your extremist autocratic regime. You could buy a squadron of F-35 fighter jets to support Western imperialism around the world. Or you could build a giant Westfield shopping centre in 1.6 billion. That's how much Croydon Council owed at the peak of its debts in 2022 after years of a Labour leadership under Tony Newman. Since new Mayor Jason Perry came in that year, he's made 90 million in cuts, negotiated 500 million in debt relief from the government and raised council tax by 15%. So that fixed the problem, right? Right? Let's have a look. In Croydon Council's recent 2024 financial report, the council said they were in 1.6 billion of debt. As for many UK councils, this debt is a heavy burden on the borough's finances. In 2024, Mayor Perry says that Croydon Council is expected to service its debts to the tune of 65 million. But he also says we need a further 38 million yearly from the government. Croydon is one of the largest and most populous boroughs in London, with a rich cultural heritage. It has a strong housing market, with average house prices at £450,000. It also has one of the oldest weekly markets in the city, good civil service jobs, and strong transport links to central London. So why then does it look like this, this, and this on a weekday afternoon? Could the council be blamed for why we were recently named London's unhappiest borough? It doesn't have to be this way. We've got a craft beer bar, we've got a box park, we've got this thing, and these things. So, how did this happen? This used to be Brick by Brick. It was founded in 2016 as a private public property developer in collaboration with Croydon Council. Coincidentally, 2016 was also the last year the council reported a revenue surplus. At the time, architects called Brick by Brick design savvy. It said it believed in doing things differently. So do I, Brick by Brick. So do I. Impressed by all the buzzwords, Croydon Council immediately lent them 100 million squid of our money. The company, headed up by Lex Luthor lookalike Colm Lacey, promised big. It said it will build 1,000 houses by 2018. It didn't. It said it will build 1,000 houses by 2019. It didn't. In 2018, the developer failed to seal the deal on the purchase of Croydon College's Barclay Road Annex building, on which it planned to build £400 million worth of new homes. As well as 2,000 flats, the developer also promised to build a new campus for Croydon College. It planned to use the sale of the homes to finance its redevelopment of the borough's flagship arts venue, Fairfield Halls, behind me. More on that later. When the Croydon College deal fell through, Brick by Brick submitted plans to the council to double the amount of housing on the city centre plot that it had managed to acquire. Double the housing, a third of the space. What could go wrong? Despite not completing a single home between 2015 and 2018, Brick by Brick continued to get council contracts. In a 2018 interview, Colm Lacey gave this interesting answer.
There is a significant risk that the newest wave of council housing companies, laden as they are with hope and symbolism, will be expected to do too much too soon.
What? Like build a house, mate? To be fair, Brick by Brick did complete some things. It was 10 million over budget and 2 years late, but in 2019, it opened New Addington Leisure Centre. That year, the company also went 30 million over budget, rebuilding Fairfield Halls. The Guardian called the rework mercifully light touch. 30 million light, apparently. Not to be too down on the project, of course. As a cultural icon of Croydon, Fairfield Halls needed it. But here it is before and after. You be the judge if that was worth 70 million. By 2020, people were getting suspicious. Brick by Brick had yet to sell a house, and its finances were so bad, it delayed reporting for 6 months. By 2021, it became clear that not only was Brick by Brick not repaying its debts, but it was losing 20 million a year. All the while, council executives who pushed for the company were making bank. Former council CEO Joe Negrini was literally called Negreedy by colleagues at the council's Catherine Street offices. She received a reported £200,000 a year salary, and on top of that was given a reported £400,000 golden goodbye when leaving the council. The same council that went bankrupt under her tenure. In 2021, an outside official from Southwark Council was brought in to put pots and pans under the leaks in Croydon's battered ship. Bad investments. This is democratic Britain, of course. Eventually someone will make an inquiry, and then they might write a very long report that only journalists in long coats, like me, will read. In this case, we have the 197-page Pen report. The council promised the report would be published in 2019, but it wasn't made public until mid-2022. So, in the spirit of this story, we'll get back to it in a bit. I'm a 31-year-old man with a degree and a solid journalism job. I had to print off this 192-page report at my mum's house. Please hit subscribe or head to our Patreon so I can buy a printer and continue to spend £10 on one-off gags like this. Eventually, the Pen report identified several key findings, most of which were of little surprise to people who've been keeping up. That's you, now you've been watching this. Aren't you lucky? Those findings also included a couple of absolute stinkers buried deep within the papery folds. Here's one.
The interaction between the London Borough of Croydon and Brick by Brick has been historically over-reliant on relationships rather than formal structure, weakening the governance around decision-making.
In other words, people were lending money to their mates. Here's another one.
There were no formal records or details that anyone was keeping an eye on the 200 million of legal loan agreements to Brick by Brick and ensuring that the returns, which were a fundamental part of the business case for members' decision to agree to take out that borrowing, actually materialised.
In other words, Brick by Brick was lent 200 million with no one watching to see if it was being paid back. This all adds up to what The Guardian in 2022 described as a picture of organisational dysfunction at the most senior levels of council. On a side note, I saw various basic errors from the council while doing my research for this report. One was shockingly bad. In 2022, current Mayor Jason Perry told a reporter at the Times that during initial investigations into Brick by Brick, an inspection of a development marked as delivered revealed that one house didn't have any stairs.
A luxury property development in Croydon, you say, might have to inspect that.
Mayor Perry then later told reporters that he was mistaken. Either way, that's not a good look. Speaking of mistakes, they go back further. While looking at Croydon Council's yearly financials, I discovered that in 2012, they reported an operating deficit spend of #ref, which for those of you who don't have a deep knowledge of Microsoft Excel on your CV, means that someone, somewhere, made an error when making the spreadsheet. Only it was then copied over to the full report with no one looking at it. We're outside Croydon Police Station, and we just explained to you how Croydon Council lost 200 million on an investment loan it allegedly handed out based on personal relationships and never bothered to check if it was paid back. Now, I'm just a YouTube journalist in a £20 coat. I don't want to get sued by anyone. But we're outside Croydon Police Station. Although undeniably a cluster, Croydon Council's downfall cannot entirely be blamed on Brick by Brick and people like Joe Negreedy or the lost Mitchell brother Colm Lacey. There is another major player in this depressing tale, or at least it's depressing for anyone who didn't make big wads of cash off it. It's time to say hello to Unibel Radamco Westfield SE. You know, yeah, Westfield, the one with the Gucci store and the stabbings, because this mess wouldn't have been possible without them. If Brick by Brick was the sledgehammer to the wall of Croydon's public finances, then the ongoing saga with Westfield was the grey British drizzle that chipped away at its foundations. Westfield first proposed building a giant supermassive hyper-mega shopping centre in Croydon in 2012. If you're not familiar with urban planning in modern Britain, when a developer comes into an area, it tends to pay the council for the privilege, usually by redeveloping the area around the commercial venture that it wants to build. This is okay when it goes well. However, problems start when the market changes and profit-minded developers lose incentive to actually, build the thing that they said they would. When the council has planned for, say, a £1.4 billion shopping centre to help fund urban centre redevelopment, they may well choose to invest the money that they think they will save in other things, like £200 million property investment skit. Can you think of anything that might have happened between 2012 and now that could cause a giant multinational corporation to hold out on building a multi-billion shopping centre in the UK? I wonder. Roll on 2017 and Westfield was not built, but it continued to promise it would be. We lost black sheeps, we lost bad apples and odd shoes. We lost the Sainsbury's that has been in Croydon since the 1950s. Most recently, Scott Parsons, UK CEO at Unibail Rodamco Westfield SE, said that updated planning proposals will be available by 2025 at the earliest. He also said that the development may be actually ready by 2038, with a brazen promise that it was an accelerated timescale. It's like, yeah, mate, I'll really have a shopping centre this time, done for real, just give me another 28 million. 2038, the year that the FIFA World Cup trophy will run out of space for new winners to be engraved and will need to be replaced. The year that the world population will reach 9 billion and fusion power will be just a decade away. It's also the year that NASA's planned 2026 mission to the outer planets, Trident, will reach Neptune. That last one is 3.16 billion miles away. So, a spacecraft is set to travel 4.16 billion miles, that's 3.57 billion kilometres, in less than half the time it took Westfield to build a shopping centre in Croydon. If it happens at all, because when it does, the shopping centre is set to be mostly replaced by... Hang on, no, I can't do that. Because when it does, the shopping centre is set to be mostly replaced by, wait for it, high-end housing developments. Some 2,000 of them promised for 2028. Wait, are they doing it again? By mid-2022, Chief Executive Negrini and Council Leader Tony Newman were ousted from power in local elections. Overall, Croydon's finances have improved little under the new regime. Operating income has actually gone up, with asset sales and council tax increases swelling the council's money bags considerably. The borough is also no longer in the top 20 UK councils with the highest debts compared to revenues. Good news, everyone. The council may well be flush with revenues, but it's all going to pay off debts. As any crackhead on the streets around here will tell you, selling off all your for a quick hit is not a sustainable path to follow, because eventually you'll run out of things to sell. See, it turns out it's not just Labour councillors that are content to make bank while Croydon lingers in development hell. Under new council CEO Catherine Kurzweil, the number of six-figure salaries at the council has actually increased. Council tax has gone up, the cuts axe has been sharpened, but still the money tree grows for a few. Currently, 16 members of senior staff at Croydon Council are being paid £3.5 million a year between them. Most recently, Mayor Perry outlined plans to increase Croydon's council tax rate by 4.99%. Seriously, what is the point in that 0.01%? This is my council tax, not a dropship water bottle that I found on TikTok. At £65 a month, 5% more on my council tax bill is £13. Yeah, I did that in my head just now, because I'm smart. 0.01% of £13 is 1.3p. Thanks for the 1 pence halfpenny, Mr. Perry. Shine your shoes, Governor. During this time, several Croydon council flats were named among the worst in Britain by various media outlets.
The landlord, Croydon Council, incompetent, uncaring and chronically short-staffed.
This is all mould.
This is all mould.
I thought about making some kind of joke here in the name of pacing, but having watched the conditions that the people in my borough are living in, I just felt sad. So, what's to be done about all this? I'm not a public policy expert, but I have an idea. In the excellent book Debt, The First 5,000 Years by sociologist David Graeber, RIP, the author discusses the long history of debt forgiveness in ancient cultures, a practice that has totally died out and would never happen today. Here's a radical idea for you. Why not forgive Croydon Council's debt repayments, at least for a few years, and tell them to bun off Westfield permanently? Use the saved money to revitalise the town centre for future returns, instead of flogging everything off just to pay interest. Blessed is he who plants the tree, under whose shade he will never sit, etc. Would Rishi Palm Angel Slider Sunak, or I need £160,000 a year Deputy CEO Catherine Kurzweil ever do that? No. Should they? Absolutely. With the crushing weight of £1.4 billion in debt over its head and the prospect of the Westfield regeneration looking likely to drag on longer than a trip to Neptune, something needs to be done, or Croydon will continue on its downward spiral. But what do I know? I'm just a guy on the internet talking into a rented microphone. Let us know what you think in the comments, and as always, keep watching the Cronks.